And how are things with Trump, though? I mean, you mentioned in the program
good, because
this frosty interview.
So when I launched my new show, I'd been very critical of Trump in the last year of his last presidency, particularly when he said you should inject yourself with bleach to cure COVID. And I'd said, I think I wrote a column for the Daily Mail saying, Mr. President, please shut up with these batshit crazy theories or people are going to die. And the next day, he did the worst imaginable thing to me. He unfollowed me on Twitter. And he only followed about 50 accounts, half of which were his companies, most of the rest of which were his kids and his family. I was the only British person who he followed. So this became a huge story. Trump unfollows me. I took it very badly, I have to say. I locked myself away in my Twitter dungeon for about 2 weeks, weeping. But then about 6 months later, he just rang me out of the blue, as he does, Trump. Piers, are we good? Are we good? I went, we're good, Mr. President. Great to hear from you. And then I did this interview with him. And this is what happened. So I go down to Mar-a-Lago, his amazing palatial home. I've got a crew of about 6 or 7. We've spent six-figure sum to get the best cameras, the best lighting, the best everything. And Trump's agreed to give me about 35, 40-minute interview at max. So actually, maybe even less, maybe like 20 minutes. But it was worth it to launch the show. And I was quite surprised because I thought, wow, okay, he's taken it well. The criticism of, especially over January 6th, the riots and the stolen election, which I didn't believe was stolen. Well, he's learned how to take criticism. Great. Big mistake. So what happened was, 10 minutes before I was due to start the interview, I was all suited, booted, made up, all ready to go, Secret Service, chatting all happily to me. Piers, great to meet you, how are things? Really nice vibe in the room. And then this guy with an ashen face who'd been like the fixer for me with the interview came to me, clutching 3 bits of paper. And he said, we've got a big problem. I went, what is it? He went, this. So I looked at it and quickly realized it was 3 pages of the worst things I had written and said about Trump in the previous 12 months. I was like, what is this? He went, someone's just sent this to the boss from London. I went, from London? I said, who? He went, I don't know. And then I thought, hang on. Who was down here 2 days ago? I checked the Twitter feed of the suspect, and there was Nigel Farage. Oh yes, the treacherous little worm. Had dinner at Mar-a-Lago 2 days before with Trump. Trump had obviously mentioned I was coming. He'd gone back, done some research, and the reason I knew it was Farage was right in the middle of all these terrible things I'd said, and some of them were terrible, were 2 compliments from somebody called Farage. So anyway, he said he wants to cancel the interview. Please, this is terrible. I said, at least let me see him. So eventually he agreed to see me. So I go in, and he's behind his desk, and he's absolutely steaming, like furious, like his blood vessels are going, everything's going. And I felt like a naughty schoolboy, and he's gone for the final detention, and is going to get a good whack. And he said, did you say these things? I said, well, which particular things we're talking about? He went, did you call me a mob boss? Did you? A mob boss? Did you say, quote, he should never be allowed to run for high office again? Did you say this? You were my apprentice. What happened to you? And this went on. He kept reading out all these awful things. And I was like really sweating, thinking, this is going nowhere. And then I had a sudden flash of inspiration. Because the key with Donald Trump is you have to change the mood music somehow. And by pure chance, that morning, I read in the Palm Beach Gazette that Ernie Els, the golfer, gave an interview. He played golf with Trump the week before and got a hole-in-one. Trump had. And Ernie said it was one of the best holes-in-one he'd ever seen and described it. And he said Trump was the best presidential golfer he'd ever played with. I went, I've got a chance here. So I went, well, Mr. President, I said, well, he wasn't Mr. President, it was in between presidents. I said, I want to talk about some good things too. And he went, well, like what? Like what? He was shouting. I said, like your hole-in-one. He went, what? You know about that? I went, know about it. I said, the whole world's talking about it. I said, have you not seen Ernie's interview in the Palm Beach Gazette? He went, Ernie's done an interview in the Palm Beach? I said, what did he say? I said, he said it was one of the best holes. He said, apparently 5-iron, 170, bang, bang, straight in the hole. Apparently brilliant with the wind coming across it. One of the best holes-in-ones he's seen. And he said, you were the best presidential golfer he'd ever played with. And Joe was like, really? He said, get me 10 copies to his agent. He said, really? He said, well, I don't know why I'm agreeing, but let's do the interview. So then we do the interview, and it goes actually great. notwithstanding he'd been shouting at me for 10 solid minutes. He goes, great. And 20 minutes goes by, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 50, 60 minutes. I've had a whole hour. His aides are trying to shut him up. But with Trump, if you just keep talking and he's happy, he keeps going. So it's all going great. And then I get round to the stolen election. And I said, well, you may as well know that I don't think you had the election stolen. He said, really? Well, then you are a fool. I said, well, maybe I am the fool in the room, but I don't think you've produced enough evidence. Well, then, like I said, you are a massive fool. And he called me a fool 7 times, and then a few more on top. And suddenly the mood music had changed somewhat, back to really what it was like in his office. And then eventually he went, all right, that's enough. And he ripped off his microphone and got up to storm off. And I went, hang on. He went, what? What? I went, we haven't done the hole-in-one. So he went, 5 more minutes. And then he was like happy as Larry talking about the hole-in-one for 5 minutes. And at the end of it, he remembered he had to be pissed off. So then he went, right, now I am done. With that, he walked off. So dishonest, terrible, terrible. And it was just priceless. Anyway, he then issued 4 presidential statements about the interview fallout, because it all became Grumpy Trumpy was the Sun's headline, New York Post front page, everything. And he issued 4 statements. And the last one, he did a rally in Michigan or somewhere. He just said, did you see that Piers Morgan guy? Wow, what a loser. What a loser. He said, I honestly, he's so dead he's catching flies. So dead he's catching flies. So I was dead. I was gone. I was dead. And then about 6 months later, the phone goes, Piers, are we good? Are we good?
Amazing. So what we've learned from that is Donald Trump has an ego.
Well, he has an ego, but stunningly, but then so do I. So this was a meeting of minds, really, and egos. But also, he doesn't really hold grudges for very long.
Right.
You see with Zelensky, for example, on a more serious level, massive bust up in the Oval Office. Actually, the next thing they're getting on great. Apparently had another big bust up behind the scenes the other day, then public, this is the way Trump will do things. He's a bit up and down. He'll sometimes use losing his temper as a weapon to get what he wants, to get leverage and so on. But nothing is that permanent.
Yeah.
And you see him make up with people all the time or fall out with people. You think he's getting on. He's a deal maker. He's like a guy, selling carpets. It's like he prices everything high, he tries to get leverage, he tries to do a good deal, and ultimately he'll shout at you and then do a deal. It's like, I don't think there's a lot of difference, just on a massively more important scale.
So is he a symptom of the fact that woke is dying, or has he been a major catalyst towards it?
I think a major catalyst towards eliminating it. I think, if you think about his last year, I talked to him a week after, I talked to him the morning he won the election. So he won at 2 a.m. And I thought, I'll give him a few hours. He doesn't sleep. Normally, if I want to speak to him, I call him at 6 in the morning. He'll pick up. We can call him now if you like. Should we? No. I did actually FaceTime him from the Dunhill Links last year up at St Andrews. You've been to the Jigger? Anyone been to the Jigger? The old course? And we called him from the patio of the Jigger, and he answered on his plane. We had a hilarious conversation with all the bar staff are like, what the fuck is happening here? It was very funny, but he was great. No, but I think the Trump, I spoke to him in the morning after he won, so about 9 in the morning. His phone rang about 8, 9 times, and eventually, Piers, he lost his voice completely. I was told he didn't sleep for 5 days before the election, 5 without any sleep at all. And he sounded like it, but then he said, can you believe this? I went, actually, I can, yeah. I said, what do you think, ultimately, what do you think has been the reason why you've won everything here? You won the White House, you won the Electoral College, the popular vote, you won the Senate, you're going to win everything. He said, I think it's what I said. He said, the core of common sense has come back. He said, people for too long have had to listen to stuff which makes no sense. And he said, whether you like me or not, there's a core of common sense. And if you think about it, there was a poll recently in The Economist that people in the UK don't particularly like Trump, personally, but they quite like Trumpism. And when you think about what that is, it'd be interesting what you think as an audience. But what is Trumpism? What it means, fewer foreign wars. We've got an American Republican president who hates war. Very unusual. We should be applauding that. And he's trying to find peace in the Middle East and in Ukraine. Hard. Every time I talk to him, it's what he talks about. He wants people to pay fewer taxes. I'd imagine there'd be some support for that in this room, right? He wants a strong border. And he's basically shut down the southern border in America after Biden let 10 million people come in illegally in 4 years. 10 million people. And we think 50,000 on the boats is a problem. Imagine 10 million illegally coming into a country like the US. Now, he goes too far with some of the immigration policies, but on the border, most people would think, well, that's a good thing, right, to have a strong border. He wants to be tougher on serious crime. Well, I would agree. right? So even though I'm not a natural conservative or even a natural MAGA guy or any of those things, I don't think that's me at all. But I can certainly find a number of things that Trumpism represents, which actually the majority of people probably think are good ideas. And I think ultimately that is why he got re-elected. The Democrats were trying to persuade us that biological men should dominate women's sport. You know, there's a Kamala Harris advert, very famous one now, where they just cut up her talking about that issue and about allowing, you know, men who identify as women into women's prisons. It cost Nicola Sturgeon her job here, right? Because it was so ridiculous to allow a male rapist into a women's prison because he went, I'm a woman. Well, of course a male rapist is going to say, I'm a woman, if it gets him locked away with women, right? I mean, how insane was that? So I think that, you know, you look at those kind of things and you just think, wow.
I mean, you mentioned specifically in the book that advert because...
So sorry, to finish the point on the advert, and it ended by saying Kamala Harris is for they, them, Donald Trump is for you.
Yeah.
And the New York Times said afterwards it was one of the most significant and effective ads in modern American political history, where they think it moved the needle on the election by 3 points. So when the woke left say nobody cares about this stuff, they do. They do care. If you're a parent and you've got a daughter who competes in sport, absolutely you care. If you've got a girl who's, you know, in a dressing room, right? You don't want adult men coming in there. Of course we don't, right? None of it is right. So I think that Trump cut through a lot of that stuff. It's not to say he's perfect by any means. He's not. Lots of things he does that I don't like. But broadly speaking, the sort of broad brushstrokes of Trumpism, I think, are getting more popular.